guys, so I just want to do a quick tip video today for you. So when you're working on a project and you have to use a final poly, whether it's polyurethane or polyacrylic, and that's the water versus the oil-based, I want to give you a quick tip. So I went ahead, I'm working on these boards here, they're going to be shelves for a client, and I stained them, and I went ahead and put my polyurethane on them, and they just don't feel as smooth as I would like. And so there is a tip to that. Once, or maybe you've got some spots in the poly where it's a little heavier, or maybe a little bit of overlap. These are awesome. These are 220 grit sanding pads. Now don't mistake it for the same grit as a 220 grit sandpaper. These are a lot finer. So these are really nice for finish sanding. And so what I'm gonna do today is sand out those little bit of maybe dust particles or uneven areas with my sanding pad, and then I'll put my final coat of poly on it, and it should be smooth as glass. So I'm just gonna show you guys. I'm also gonna show you me putting on the polyurethane, because this is one of the most challenging parts of a project. I have experienced it myself, and I hear a lot of people that have experienced problems putting on polyurethane or polyacrylic on your painted furniture. It can be really difficult. There's so many different tips and tricks that you can use, but in order to get a really smooth coat, the best thing that I can recommend for you guys is to sand in between the coats. Get rid of any of that stuff that's maybe landed on top and now dried, or like I said, uneven. So I'm gonna show you. So you just take your sanding pad. I put my gloves on, so I'm ready for my polyurethane that's gonna come up next, but you don't need gloves for this. And basically, I'm gonna tip the camera down. Basically, you're just gonna give it a light sand. It's not heavy at all. It's meant to smooth it out. That's it. So you're not gonna go real heavy-handed, and you're not gonna concentrate on one spot. You're just kind of going over the whole thing, trying to eliminate any rough spots. Now it's hard to see in my picture, well you can a little bit, but what you're gonna wanna look for is that white residue. That's the top coat, so that's good because you're not breaking through anything, whether your painted surfaces or your stained surface underneath, you're not breaking through. When you see that white residue, that's just the polyurethane or acrylic that you're kind of sanding into a little bit. Okay, I'm gonna take off my glove. So I was a little premature putting the gloves on, but I'm gonna take it off so that I can feel my project smooth as could be. So it got out any of those little dust particles that were in there, and now I'll wipe it down with a microfiber cloth, and then I'm ready for my final coat of polyurethane. These are really long boards. Well, they're not really long, but when it comes to polyurethaning, anything bigger than this is really long to me because it's a little difficult. Because you want to be as have a nice flow and as smooth as possible. So I'm going to show you guys how I polyurethane a really long piece. So I have my polyurethane. I poured mine out into a little paper dish, and I'm gonna go ahead and do both of these boards. I have my handy little trick here, which is, I've talked about this many times, it's the staining pad with the nylon wrapped around it. This is great for large surfaces because it'll allow me to get a lot of the product on there. One of the things you wanna keep in mind when you're using a poly is that you don't wanna go super dry. You do wanna put a good amount of product on so that you can work with it. So we're gonna get started. So I'm just dipping my entire sponge in there. I'm gonna let it drip off a little bit, and then I'm gonna go from one end literally to the other. And the good thing about using this sponge method is that it gets a huge amount of coverage going. You don't have to have, I'm basically gonna have 3 passes and I'm done. And I will go back over this to catch any large maybe drips or anything that I might have missed. So I'll go over it one more time. The key to working with any poly, don't overwork it. I would not suggest going over your areas more than 2 times. You're gonna walk away. Most polys will kind of level, and they are a a little bit forgiving. Now, the one thing I will tell you is this is a great trick, but if you've got sides and bottoms and things like that, you may have some drip, right? Plus you need to get those covered. So I don't use that. What I do then is I take a foam brush, I dip it in my product just the same, and I'm gonna go right down my sides. For one, that will catch any drips, and for two, that will give me my coverage on the sides that I need. And you don't want a lot on your brush because you don't want to be dripping all over the place. And done. So there you go. There it is there. You can see the difference, right? The front one I still have to do, and the back one's got its beautiful coat on. If you could see this, which I'll show you up close in just a minute, you'll see how nicely this laid down. So it all has to do with how your prep is done. Basically, I sanded down the wood bare. I put a nice couple coats of stain on. I think I did 2 coats of this stain, and then I sanded it again with my 220 sanding pad before I put my poly on. Each time wiping in between to make sure I got rid of as much dust particles that I could on the board. And so this is my 3rd and final coat of polyurethane, and in between each coat of the polyurethane, I sanded with my 220 pad. And that may sound like a lot of work. It really isn't. It goes rather quickly, and the end result is going to be totally worth it, because there's nothing worse than maybe skipping a step or 2 and then not having that final outcome be what you want, because what you're going to have to do then is start all over. Nobody wants to start all over, right? So take the extra few steps and a little bit of time that it takes, and you'll have a beautiful outcome. Okay, you guys, thanks for watching today. Don't forget, I almost forgot, don't forget to subscribe, because that way you can continue to get all my videos. Okay, thanks again. Okay, so I just wanted to show you guys an up close. As you can see, it's obviously still really wet, but it went on beautifully. It's gonna dry, I think, just great, and I don't think I'll have to do another coat. So that is 3 coats of the General Finishes Armor Seal in a satin and 220 sanding pad in between.